I had promised you a method, or a rubric, if you will, by which you could reconcile your mad, passionate feelings of brain love for Sam and Nikki. Heather McPhers is going to help you work through these strange new feelings you might be experiencing, wherein you feel brain love, or perhaps crotch love, I don't know, for at least 2, possibly more, depending on who you talk to during intermission. 2 folks, 3 folks, 5 folks, 10 folks, I don't know. But she's going to talk with you about relationships that are not just dyads. And with that being said, Heather, you want to come on up? Let's welcome Heather. Outstanding.
Hi, everyone. How are you guys doing? My name is Heather McPhers, and I'm a virgin. I'm a NerdNite virgin. Do we have any other NerdNite virgins here? Yay! That helps me feel not alone, and that's so important with this topic, because with this topic of open relationships and non-monogamy, one of the most important things is for them to find community and find people who are like them. So now I found people like me, so I don't feel so alone, so thank you. I'm also a licensed professional counselor supervisor and licensed marriage and family therapist and a sex therapist. I supervise 2 interns in my practice, Melanie Rabelais, who's here. She works with millennials, and Jessica Cogden, who's an excellent sex therapist as well. And I also founded the Sexual Health Alliance, which is a organization that's nationwide now. We have the Southwest Sexual Health Alliance here in the Southwest, and the Great Lakes up in Chicago and the Great Lakes area. And we provide educational opportunities in sexual health to mental health professionals and medical professionals, which is really important because they get little to no education in sexuality. Crazy, you can go to a couples therapist and they have no idea how to talk about sex. So all of our events are open to everyone, so you can come, anyone can come and learn more if you want. So many choices. I don't know if I could say it as cool as Amy did earlier, but so many choices. Navigating the ever-changing landscape of open relationships. That's what we'll be talking about. Now, my story, many, many years ago, I walked into a bar and I sat down next to a couple of friends, and they introduced me to their friend Jessica, who said, "Hey, I'm Jessica, here's my husband, and here's my boyfriend." And I said, "What? You can do that? What?" My mind was completely blown. I had no idea that was possible. I grew up very conservative and religious and had no clue. And so as a couples and marriage family therapist, I said, "Ooh, I want to learn more about this. This is fascinating." So I committed, the past 10 years to learning more and researching it, and making friends with people in different communities, which is always fun. And now my private practice is focused on alternative sexuality, which includes open, poly, and kinky and swingers, all the kinds of fun clients. Yeah! So we'll be talking about open relationships, but it will kind of be interchangeable with consensual non-monogamy. Whenever you look at the research, it's usually noted as consensual non-monogamy, which can be different from open relationships because open relationships can include cheating, which is obviously not consensual. So just a little bit of terminology to start off. So history. In the beginning, swinging was the first modern form of non-monogamy. It was in the 1920s and 30s in Hollywood, and there was also some speak about in the Air Force, husbands would loan their wives out or would have their wives be taken care of by other Air Force pilots while they went off on missions. And I think that's still part of the culture, even though it's underground, because adultery is illegal in the military, so that's absolutely not allowed. Constantine noted multilateral marriages, which is 3 people or more, or 3 people, and group marriages, which is 4 people or more. And then some people trace the word polyamory, which is a part of open relationships. So open relationships and consensual non-monogamy is the umbrella term for many types of relationships that fall under those categories. So some people trace the word polyamory back to the 1960s. In 1972, George O'Neill wrote a book and coined the topic open marriage. And the book sold 1.5 million copies. So this tells you this isn't a new thing. It's been a while. It's been around for a while. People started identifying as poly in 1990s, and the book Ethical Slut was published, which is like the Bible for people in these types of relationships. And then I always find it interesting, 2007 Oprah conducted a study that said 21% were in open marriage, which seemed really high, but I think that also speaks to the trend that we're seeing. So this is just a quote that's in Ethical Slut, which is, our belief is that human capacity for sex and love and intimacy is far greater than what most people think, possibly infinite, and that having a lot of satisfying connections simply makes it possible for you to have a lot more. Yeah. Yes. So consensual non-monogamy includes ethical and open and negotiated non-monogamy. It's non-secret. Some of this includes swinging, open, monogamous, which Dan Savage coined that word, which means that you're mostly monogamous. Polyamory, polyfidelity, which is, for lack of a better term, is a closed group. So they consider themselves equal and committed to each other. And then relationship anarchy, which is, anything goes. So this is a fun graphic, and you can look it up. There's the source over there, but it just kind of gives you an idea of like how many types of relationships there are, how many ways to do this. It's infinite. One of them is yes, Mr. Hefner, I'll be a part of your harem. Another one is what stays in Vegas. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. We're monogamous except for when he's on the road. So there's a lot of different ways, and so it tells you there's open relationships, there's polyamorous relationships, there's unicorn polyamory, whatever the hell that is, swinging, closed group swinging, BDSM, and DS, non-monogamy, which a lot of people in those communities tend to be a little bit more open to the idea of having an open relationship, and we'll get into that in a second. And this is continued. So recently I was in Playboy. My parents were so proud of me. No, that's not me on the cover. Yeah. I was quoted alongside Dr. David Lay, who's a good friend and colleague of mine, talking about cuckoldry and hot wifing. Does anyone know what that is? So cuckoldry is a form of open relationship, actually, and it kind of involves the humiliation aspect of a couple, and the husband wants the wife, and this is kind of the heterosexual meaning, although it happens in other communities as well. The husband wants the wife to have sex with another person while he watches or hears or knows about it, and the humiliation is very arousing for him. Hot wifing, there's a distinction between hot wifing, and hot wifing is where the husband or partner or male partner thinks that the wife is so hot that they want to loan them out and takes pleasure in how hot and desirable she is. So we talked about that in that article back in December. There's friends with benefits, or fuck buddies. There's kink and BDSM. In those communities, you can be in an open relationship and maybe not have sex or intercourse. One of the things that I always like to talk about in my work is that sex is not sex. It's not intercourse in the way that you think of. Sex is just any type of pleasurable touch. And intercourse is penis and vagina sex, right? So kink and BDSM is a really good example of that, because you can be open or play with others but not have sex or intercourse or even genital touch with other people. Then there's open/poly relationships, open/mono relationships, poly/mono relationships, which basically means that you can be in a relationship with someone and you remain monogamous, and maybe they are poly and open, and I've seen those configurations as well. When we think of open relationships, we think of orgies, right? Lots and lots of sex, drama, sadness. Lots of things come to our mind, right? Like, I could never do that. People don't do that. How could they do that? Don't they get jealous? You're not committed. You're immoral. You're never satisfied. Just so many messages that come to mind whenever people think about people who are in open relationships. And of course, there's a huge stigma of people who are in open relationships. This graphic is research from 2013 that describes that people think that those that are in open relationships are sexually risky. They aren't as moral. They're not happy. They're not honest. They're really, really lonely. And oh, by the way, they don't brush their teeth or floss or take a multivitamin. So it's pretty extensive. So the reality, obviously, can look very different. It could be you do have jealousy. You can feel jealousy. You compromise. You negotiate. You explore. So a lot of people do it for personal and spiritual growth, and there's a lot of different reasons behind it. So research suggests that the psychological well-being of people in consensual non-monogamous relationships are no different than those that are monogamous, that they're not significantly different. So they experience equitable levels of commitment, longevity, satisfaction, passion, love, greater trust, and lower jealousy, actually, than compared to monogamous relationships. And people in extra-dyadic encounters also talk about STI histories more often, and they use condoms, and they use gloves for genital touching. I know you guys all do that, right? And by the way, they're happier and healthier according to a global social study survey. So oftentimes people think, what about the children? Elizabeth Sheff is a really great researcher and writer that writes a lot about polyamorous relationships. And she interviewed a lot of parents of kids that were aged 5 to 18, interviews with kids of poly parents, and found that they're articulate, thoughtful, intelligent. Basically, the kids are all right, right? And then this is just a fun graphic where people fall. You can be very sexually open. You can be somewhat. You could be usually monogamous, or asexual. So something in my work that I talk about a lot is the continuum of monogamy. And monogamy is something that obviously is socially accepted. It's what most of us do or attempt to do. And it's really important to have those conversations with whomever you're in a relationship with. Now, you ask me, what is the continuum of monogamy, right? Isn't just I'm monogamous and that's it? Well, no, especially with how much stuff there is out there with the internet and chat rooms and porn and everything else. There's a lot of options and potential exploration that your partner may or may not be okay with. So I always encourage couples to talk about what is their relationship agreement, and they go, oh, I'm monogamous. Well, not so fast. Can you acknowledge interests in other people? Can you fantasize about other people? Can you watch porn, which is, obviously a really big thing in our society. A lot of people do not want their partners to watch porn. Can you go to strip clubs? What about the occasional threesome? Flirting, falling in love. All those things are stuff that we don't talk about because we prefer to play in the gray area and not have those conversations. And that's how you end up sitting next to your partner at 10 p.m. at night and you saw that they just friended their ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend on Facebook, and you're going, what? I wasn't okay with that. So motivations, there's exploration, mixed sexual orientation. So if you're in a relationship with someone who is bi, and they want to explore that part of themselves, then that could be a motivation for open relationship. If you're disabled, maybe you're disabled later in life, or maybe you've always been and you're not able to perform the way you want to, and you want your partner to have sexual satisfaction, that could be a reason. If you're in a long-distance relationship, if you have mixed sex drive, one partner wants sex more than the other, BDSM, as we talked about, life transitions, romantic orientation. Lots of reasons why people want to explore these types of relationships. So now we are on to the rise of consensual non-monogamy or open relationships. So a lot of the research and stuff points to the reason why this is a viable option is because people are living longer. We don't have shorter lifespans where you only have to be faithful and monogamous for 30, 40, 50 years. Now it's a lot longer. There's high divorce rates, obviously. And then women are gaining more equality and power. Woo! Yeah. And so that encourages them to take control of how they want to have relationships as well. And of course, the biggest one, I think, is the expansion of the internet, giving more visibility to sex-positive culture and connecting people to other communities. Remember when I said that one of the most important things is that you find community, that you get connected with other people that do this too. I was just having lunch with a therapist earlier today that talked about they just had a client that has a husband and they live with their boyfriend, they all live together, and the client was saying, yeah, we're polygamous. And the reason why she used that word is because that's all she knew. She didn't know that what that actually was polyamorous, which is completely different. So she hadn't done any research, she hadn't read any books or looked at the internet or found community, and she was feeling a lot of shame, actually, and a lot of isolation in her relationships because she didn't know anyone else did it. She didn't even have the language to describe it. So typically, consensual non-monogamy is higher in bisexual and gay communities. You think of the sex clubs and the bathhouses, and that's something that they've been doing for a long, long time, right? And so heterosexual counterparts are just catching up just now. Now, what's really interesting is research from 2016 said that 1 in 5 Americans have engaged in this arrangement in their lifetime, which is quite staggering in my mind. That's a lot of people that have tried this are currently doing this. And then other research suggests that over the past 10 years, poly and open relationships not swinging have become increasingly popular. Swinging is actually on the decline, even though I have a lot of couples in my practice that swing too. So I don't know, maybe it's an Austin thing. Some benefits that people cite is that you have a village, you're more authentic in communication. If you're not good at having one relationship, do not try to have multiple relationships. It's a whole lot more communication. It's a whole lot more work. Don't do it. Get really good at that one relationship first. And then it's alternative to serial monogamy. Esther Perel often says that in the past we have one relationship after another. We end one and we go up to another one and we go to another one. And so that's called serial monogamy, right? Where you get divorced 2 or 3 times and trade one set of problems for another set of problems. A book that I like is Opening Up. It's a great book. I suggest to clients. And common struggles in open relationships. Obviously, there's plenty of things that people have to work out. Jealousy, obviously, is an issue. People do feel jealous. It's not something that, I'm poly or I'm open and I don't have any jealousy ever. Although I have met people who say that. But it is something that it's a human feeling. You're human. Congratulations, you feel jealousy. And so you have to work through it and talk about it. So insecurity, obviously, it can be a backdrop to other presenting issues, especially in therapy. They just want a therapist that is open to and not going to pathologize that, that's why you have this problem. It's because you are doing this, which happens a lot more than you think. So something that I like about just in general all relationships I like to teach is that the sexual health principles, and there's 6 principles. Protection from STIs and unwanted pregnancy is something that we have a right to. Consent, something that's obviously really good to have. Honesty, non-exploration, mutual pleasure, and shared values. Something that we're really not good talking about is pleasure in our culture, right? We're really, really good talking about all the negatives of sex, STIs, unwanted pregnancy, rape, everything, right? All these things that really contribute to the fear of sex and our sexuality. Something that we're really not good talking about is the mutual pleasure, right? Sex should be pleasurable, right? Yes. I do too. So how to be an ally to people that are in open or kinky or poly or whatever kind of relationship structure they choose. First, don't out them. That goes without saying. Second, be careful about your own biases, right? When you're talking to them. I don't really understand that. How could you? Those things aren't something that you want to say. You want to say something like, I don't know much about that. Can you tell me more? So I think the future of relationships, something that Carol Queen quotes, she's a really great activist. She quotes that relationship or sexual identities and orientations, we should be thinking in terms of millions, right? So as the brilliant Sam Killerman said, we should think of a continuum. It's not one or the other. There's so much in between. And she said we should be thinking in terms of millions of orientation and identity in terms of sexuality. I think the same should apply to relationships and relationship structures. We should be thinking in terms of millions. It's not just monogamous or poly or relationship anarchy. All of this stuff in between is so much there. People have the ability to create what they want. And again, somebody, can say that they're monogamous sometimes or monogamish, as Dan Savage says. And that's for real. I mean, I've had couples that say, oh, we're monogamous, we're monogamish, but we have threesomes once a month. We're still monogamous. And so part of it is just with our ever-expanding understanding of sexuality, we need to be aware of all the possibilities that people might engage in and how technology obviously aids in that exploration and kind of pushes us forward and progresses the ideas. So I think that monogamy will still be a popular and convenient option in the future. It just won't be the only one, right? We need to be thinking in millions and millions of ways to have relationships. Thank you. I actually did 21 minutes. I'm kind of proud of myself right now. That was a lot of information. I hope you stuck with me.
Ladies and gents, as near as I can tell, we don't have any social media questions, but I think we have a question from front row. What's up?
I have a lot of questions, and I'll probably just find them later. I feel like maybe post that link to that first graphic with all these really complicated weirdness going on.
So it sounds like that was a request to post a link to the graphic with all the complicated weirdness going on.
Yes, I can do that.
Back that way. Growing up in a conservative household, how did your parents react to what you do today?
So the first time I had a conversation with my mom, I said about what I do, what I'm going to do. I said, Mom, I'm going to be a sex therapist. This is what I love. And she looked at me and she said, I know I made a lot of mistakes with you. Which was amazing. I mean, that I actually felt love for her when she said that. So they find it a little bit difficult, but they're learning. My mom actually took the Playboy magazine home and read it, but then brought it back to me. Said, here you go, I don't want it. But she read it, and that really meant a lot to me. So, yeah, they're working on it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so she's asking about the history of monogamy. It's really socially constructed, right? You can look at centuries, decades, 18th century, 17th century. There's records of people being in open relationships and non-monogamous. They don't call it that; they call it something different. Both. I mean, obviously, in Western culture, it's more acceptable for a man to cheat or be in an open relationship, but yeah, it's socially constructed monogamy, and it's really good for our culture. Our culture is set up to be for you to be successful as a monogamous person. So, yes. So your question is, what can you do to open up that conversation? Is that what you're saying?
What have we done in America to make it more acceptable?
Okay. So as Dan Savage says, we need more bisexual people coming out of the closet and stating that they're bisexual because that will help push our culture forward. I think the same goes for people in open relationships or consensual non-monogamous. The more people talk about it and come out about it, the more acceptable it will be in the future. So the question is, how do as a therapist, how do I respond to clients that have jealousy issues and opening up the relationship or being in an open relationship? I think that the most important thing about any relationship is being able to express your feelings in a healthy way. And the same goes for jealousy, to be able to talk about it and express it and kind of be out about it to your partner and to the people that you're in a relationship with can be really healthy. If you know how to talk about it in a really productive way and express yourself and say, hey, I'm feeling this way. What can we do about that? Or what can I do about that? How can I take care of myself whenever I'm feeling that way? That could be helpful.
It seems like to me, and I may have a skewed perspective, hot lighting and Coco Tree are both really misogynistic approaches to the thing. Like as if I'm giving away. If that were something that I was a part of, like I'm a commodity, and I'm wondering if that like my take on it, or is that kind of in the design of it? It's how you stated it too.
Yeah, so the question is that hot wifing and cuckoldry seems misogynistic and kind of takes away the power from women. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes.
Um,
I'm asking, is that like in the design of it?
So there was a really great article in the New York Times about, and this will kind of push your boundaries, so just prepare yourself. There's a really great article in the New York Times about how there was Melina Williams, who's a really outspoken kink activist, and an African American, is in a master-slave relationship with a Caucasian white man, and they do race play. And so I use that example because what she's doing is she's taking back her power and in control of how those scenes play out. And I think that it can be the same for hot wifing and cuckoldry, hard to say. Women often feel more power, that they're in control of what happens. And for hot wifing, actually, for the the man to loan out his wife or takes pleasure. And in part, it can be described in many ways. People do it in a lot of different ways, right? But they take pleasure in, usually the male partner takes pleasure in sharing his hot, super hot wife, right? And a lot of times, the wife, if they enjoy it, right, which you don't want to be in any type of relationship you don't enjoy, if you enjoy it, part of it is that they're taking back their power and they're being sexually exploratory and they're able to do that in a really safe and healthy way, in a consensual way with their partner. And so it actually can be more empowering. But again, it's kind of like if that doesn't feel good to you, don't do it, right? Yes. Okay. Do I think monogamy is the natural state? I think for some people, yes, it is. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think for some people, they feel really comfortable being in a monogamous relationship, and it really works for them. And that's natural for them. For other people, it doesn't feel natural to them. It feels restricting. I have no idea. What percentage of people are naturally monogamous? I have no idea. I mean, there's the thing with sex research, in particular, alternative sexuality research, is that there's not enough money for it, so we don't have good research around it. A lot of the stuff that I cited was relatively recent, 2015, 2013, 2016, which is really great. It's becoming more prevalent, but there's a lot of bad research out there, and there's a lot of books written that have kind of soft science, or they don't quite explain it in a way that makes sense. So I don't know.
Why do I give a shit if penguins are monogamous?
Don't. Yeah. Yeah.
This may seem like a rather boring question, but from one therapist to another,
Yeah.
what is the best or most easily accessible resources for clients to bring up non-monogamous relationships?
So I listed two of them. The book called Opening Up by Tristan Taormino and Ethical Slut. Those are my two favorites for clients. Yeah, for clients exploring or wanting to learn more, or even clients that have been doing this for years and maybe they've never read anything, and that's why it's kind of going off the rails. I say, let's go back to basics. Let's figure out first, sometimes how to just have one healthy relationship, right? And then second, how can we create a relationship agreement that makes sense, that's consensual, that feels good to everyone? Yeah. Yeah, so say more about that.
So like there are tons of secret Facebook groups for all sorts of open relationships.
Right.
Relationship anarchy, polyamory,
Right.
polymono variations, and most of the community is really great about answering questions.
Right.
These resources for your poly-friendly therapists and other things like that.
Yeah, I have clients that talk about how they go to Poly Cocktails, which I guess is a Facebook group. So what she's saying is that there's a lot of groups out there that can answer questions, and you can gain support from talking to other people in that style.
It helps you feel less alone.
Yeah, exactly. Just like how I was a NerdNite virgin, and I felt less alone because there's so many other people out there. Yay! Yeah.
There's like a time range where all monogamous relationships fail, like 7 to 11 or so years. Is there such a term for monogamous relationships that have a set end date? Like I will be monogamous until 10 years from now.
So are you saying in monogamous relationships, is there a set end date?
Is there a specific term that's used for like monogamous relationships that only last a certain amount of time?
7-year itch. I don't know. I mean, I think that's probably a real thing. I've seen many people that are right around that cusp. Yeah, again, I don't think there's good research out there on that. Yeah. Anyone else? Thank you so much, guys, for having me. Appreciate it.